it.
Well,
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
It'll be up on the website. It was some
That's
pretty.
what I was looking for just a few minutes ago, if I could listen to it.
Is it up on the website yet? Yes. As an MP3? Okay, it is up there now, I'm told.
Okay.
So it lives there at the Essential Public Radio website as an MP3, I guess.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
there was, it was a lot of serious editing because I talked to each of you guys for a little more than 20 minutes, and the feature that I had to fit into a 7.5-minute window, so there was some culling that happened. But essentially, I think got the gist of what we were looking to do is just here's some guys from our hometown who decided to see if this rock and roll thing's going to work out, and 25 years later, it's working out. And
that's cool.
Some of the twists and turns in the road along the way, not getting too much into detail because there really wasn't time, but there was a lot of the part of your interview that I used most extensively was when you were talking about how you showed up at IUP and you were thinking maybe soccer might be something that you'd do, and you knew that even if you did, it wasn't going to be too long into the future because an athletic career doesn't take you into your middle years, but that was something that you played around with as an idea and thought might happen.
Right.
And,
interesting. Well, that's good. I'm glad you took that because that part of the story oftentimes doesn't get out there so much.
And I also had a chance to include a lot of what, or a fair amount of what Rob was saying about when you play at different venues around the country and people show up in their Steelers with their terrible towels or wearing a Steelers shirt or a Penguins jersey, because you guys have in fact become emblematic of the city to people, especially the Pittsburgh diaspora, the people who are elsewhere but still hold their hometown in high regard and they gravitate towards things that represent Pittsburgh. Every town has a Steelers bar, and this is not unsimilar to that. In fact, it's quite similar to that, where it's a Pittsburgh thing, very recognizable as a Pittsburgh thing, and people coalesce around that.
Yeah, it's huge, and I don't think you find that in too many other places. The Pittsburgh thing, that culture, does what it does.
Yeah, I think a lot of things set Pittsburgh apart a little bit. I don't say this with any great knowledge of other cities, but there is a unique quality to Pittsburgh in that we're not an eastern city, we're not an Atlantic Coast city, we're not a Midwest city. We're only 40 miles from the Mason-Dixon line, and we exist in a unique and separate part of the country, and a unique and separate culture has grown up around it. And I think the fact that Pittsburgh was the butt of a lot of jokes back in the 40s and 50s, or 30s, 40s, and 50s, when you had to turn the streetlights on at noon because of all the pollution, that maybe started to engender a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A bit of pushback against that, which I think ultimately took the form of a lot of hometown pride.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably remember listening to Johnny Carson, that whenever there was a disparaging joke to be made, it was always related toward Pittsburgh, pollution or we're dirty or this or that, and I think so many people develop their impression of what we are by that. Yeah. And that's so far from the truth now.
Although I think there's a toughness to the image of Pittsburgh that is kind of represented in the what am I looking at? Oh, okay. Comments are coming in of on a is this a tablet, a notebook? I'm a Luddite, man. I can handle 19th century technology, but anyways, so is the name of the band based on the candy bar, or is there a deeper meaning? Yeah.
Actually, it's a far shallower meaning,
okay. Cool.
And it's not the candy bar. No. We were looking back when we started. The bands were, the names that were popular were the Smiths, the Joneses, the Johnsons. It was surname type things, and we were entering a rock competition, and we didn't really have a good name for the band at that time. And I was at work one day, and a number of different companies or clients came in named Clark. John Clark, this Clark, Clark Industries. And I mentioned it one day at practice, and you know, we just kind of used it, and then it stuck because it was somewhat nondescript. You know, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't country name. It wasn't a heavy metal name. It wasn't this name or that name, and that's what we were sort of happy with as we saw, you know, it sort of stick.
Cool. I never knew that either, so I'm glad that question came in. It's pretty cool. When you guys started, not when you first started up at IUP, but when you got down to Pittsburgh and started your first gigs, the first time I saw you was at Graffiti. And you guys played shows quite often with 11th Hour and the Affordable Floors, it'd be like a triple bill at Graffiti. Were those the first larger venues you played away from IUP?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We hooked up with those guys with the 11th Hour. They were IUP guys, too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so we you know, we shared as many shows, or they let us open as many shows as possible because we had a similar setup. So, you know, changing from one act to the other was real easy.
Yeah.
They were good people, and they really showed us the way. And the Floors, you know, they had the first record deal in quite some time. And those guys were great to hang out with, just to sort of get an idea of what the music industry was like, you know, and learn from their...
Did you guys share management, too?
No, not really.
I didn't. Oh, speaking of which, you know who I ran into last night? From back in the old days, Pat McCardle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he walked up to me. I was at a place last night, and he come up and he reached out his hand and said, "Bob Studebaker," and he looked at me like he wasn't expecting me to recognize him. And I said, took me a moment, and I said, "I'll be darned, Pat McCardle." So we had a nice chat last night. Probably been about 25 years since I've seen him, but
I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, and I was at YEP about 4 or 5 years ago. And I saw him in there, and he had some artwork sitting there. I guess they were decorating the walls at the new station, and he had one of Westview Park, or of the trolleys in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah?
Said, "You got to take a look at this." And I looked at it, and there was a copy of an original from an older guy, and I have it hanging right in my bedroom right now.
I'll be darned.
So yeah, so he sold me a piece of art.
That's cool. Yeah, it was kind of a real surprise to see him. It was at a jazz place down in the Strip District last night. So getting back to the early days of Graffiti, it was a battle of the bands that you guys won. Am I remembering correctly? Because this is going back.
We came in second, and that was the point at which we needed a name.
Okay.
For the band, you know, we used the Clarks, and we said, okay, after this, you know, after we find a better name, we'll do it. But we got such name recognition out of that experience that we felt that we couldn't change the name. And 11th Hour actually won the contest that year.
Okay. Yeah, I got to know Sean a little bit in years after that. He was working for National Record Mart, and I did a lot of work for National Record Mart back in the late 80s and early 90s.
That's right, yeah.
And, I think last time I talked to him, he was living up in Sealy and Oakville.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I saw Sean and Dave a couple times. They did a duo thing at a place on Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill a couple times that I stopped in and saw them, too.
And they were good at the duo thing. You know, it would have been nice to see them continue that thing. But,
yeah.
You know, Dave Mitchell, he lives straight down the street from me, and I haven't even talked to him ever since we moved here 8 years ago.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I was at the Shadyside Arts Festival. I forget. It was the one on Walnut Street because they've been having dueling festivals in Shadyside for a while. You know, I'm not even sure if they still do. They may have resolved that, but it was in the years, I guess, mid-'90s, and I was there for it was a jazz event, and he had a rock gig going on at one of the places. I think it might have been Humphreys. It was on the right-hand side of Walnut as you're going away from Aiken. Mm-hmm. And they had a place up on the roof, and he was setting up a band, and he had a guy from England that was the guy that was in the band who did the song Starry Eyes, which 11th Hour did a lot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he was so happy to have this guy who's one of his musical heroes. He thought it was so great to have him in Pittsburgh, and he's showing him around. He's going to do a gig with him, and I had a chance to meet him and have a beer, and it was pretty cool.
Oh, I'm trying to think of, boy, they played that song all the time.
Yeah.
That's a great tune, and I can't think of the name of the band.
Neither can I right now, but I remember it real well, and it was a great jangly guitar,
yeah.
Very Beatlesque pop kind of a sound to it. Maybe not so much Beatlesque, but very English and had a 60s pop rock feel to it, vibe to it.
Totally fit in with what they were doing.
Pardon?
totally fit in with what they were doing. You know, it was.
Yeah. And that's why those gigs that you guys did, where the three bands played, were so cool, because it was three distinct personalities of music, three distinct sounds. You guys had the what I think is, and maybe why you've had the longevity and the identity with the city, is you had a harder edge and a toughness to the sound of your music. It wasn't heavy metal by any stretch, but it was hard. You rocked really hard, and really well, and plus you had the really catchy songs that you guys wrote. But then the Floors, they had that almost, the new wave was the word used back then.
Oh yeah.
But they had a different sound, and then the very English pop sound of 11th Hour. You had three different bands with three very distinct musical personalities playing a gig, and it made for a nice show.
I can't even imagine how many shows we did together as a triple bill. The graffiti shows, the Upstage. We did some. What was the place downtown? The old Mirage or whatever, the big old bank, or well, it's the Renaissance now, right?
Yeah. It was called Heaven for a while, I think.
Yeah. We played down there, and then the Metropole.
Yeah, that's right.
There was just
Metropole opened up right about the time Double X went off the air. I remember being down there for one of their several grand openings.
Yeah.
Places like that, they all have multiple grand openings and invite people, and I remember being there for that. And a couple things in subsequent years after that. So, let me ask, who wrote the song you guys use, that you guys did for the? Is there something for me to see here? I'm getting technical assistance here. Just making sure we have a question.
Yeah, you got it.
We have a couple of questions. I just don't know how to get to them, so I've got some technical assistance. I think I remember when we were talking for the interview, and I didn't get a chance to include this in because, like I say, I had to, work it down to 7.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You do most of the songwriting now.
Myself and Scott.
Okay. Was it you guys who wrote "It's All About the Ride"? Life is all about the ride.
I wrote that sitting here in my house. Yeah.
Because that's catchy as can be. I mean, you listen to that and you think, oh man, that should be on an album.
Yeah, and the suggestion came up that, can we take that jingle and turn it into a song? And is that a good idea, or is that a bad idea to then try and write a 3.5-minute song and play it? Is that, there's a high side and there's a low side to that, and I'm not sure if I want to jump into that. If you listen to the Friends theme and say, okay, well, let's turn this into a song and play it in our set. Would that be cheesy? Would it be selling out? Or not selling out, but it usually works inverse to that. You write a song.
Dig it, yeah.
And I don't know if I would want to turn the show into a commercial, as much as I really love that jingle.
I have a question here from somebody hanging out with us on Google+. What's your favorite place to play in Pittsburgh? What's your favorite venue? There
are a number of good places. If you have to pick an A1, it's got to be Stage AE Outdoors.
Yeah.
Is a really great place. Though we play a rib cook-off outside of Heinz Field. At the end of the summer, it's kind of been a traditional thing. That's a great location too, because so many people are packed in there. When we get to wintertime, doing indoor shows, we've had a lot of fun the past couple of years doing the Rex. Good old Rex.
Yeah, well, that's always a great place. It really is. Oh, speaking of the Rex, you never got to any of those Double X reunion shows, did you?
I have not yet, because we always seem to be playing or something's going on at the time,
Like had gigs somewhere else, another part of the state or something. But there were two of them, and I guess it was Rod Schwartz who essentially put the band together for that. And somebody told me, who knew one of the musicians, they said it was like having a second job for 6 months leading up to that. Because they learned like 100 songs for that, and everything they played was just note for note perfect. They had great horn sections when they needed them.
Yeah.
Great singing. Multiple singers up on stage, and Rod was up there for I think every song, and he was working hard those nights.
See, that's why I never show up, because Rod's always hogging the bass part.
It was a great show. The dude who owned the Rex at the time, I think it's since changed hands. I think it was Chris that was in the Sponges.
Chris and Bill, who were in the Sponges.
Sponges, that's all right. Yeah, he told me that they were the biggest crowds he had ever had in the Rex during the time that he owned it. Because they did jam pack it. It was really successful, and that's why they did another one the following year. And then there haven't been any since. But there's always that talk, and if it happens, it'll be Chris Winter who makes it happen. She's the driving force behind it.
Yeah, and they just did the Exile on Carson, which was the Rolling Stones tribute show, which happened, what was that, last month. So I think and somebody had just made talk of another tribute show, and I can't remember if it was a Bowie.
There's a Beatle tribute show happening somewhere on the south side. I saw it when I was walking up Carson for lunch one day. There was a flyer in somebody's window. I don't remember
okay.
What it was, but there was somebody doing a Beatles thing, and local bands or members of local bands were going to show up, and everybody does a couple of Beatle numbers. I think that is generated from the folks maybe at Pittsburgh Guitars. Carl Greffenstedt, I think, had a hand in that for years, and I think that's where that energy comes from there. Yeah, he's been on the South Side for a lot of years before the South Side turned into what it is today. He was here, and he's a big Beatles fan too. I've seen things, where he's talking about his love for the music, and then he's got a encyclopedic knowledge of it, singing too.
Oh, and the collection of his Beatle replica guitars is pretty amazing too.
Yeah. So back to the earlier days. When you first started playing gigs outside of graffiti, because I guess graffiti was pretty much those triple bill gigs he did with 11th Hour and Affordable Floors got you rolling, and then you started branching out, I'm guessing, on your own. And what were the first venues you played as strictly the Clarks headlining?
I guess graffiti was kind of a first place, but we would do the Upstage, and we would do the Decade. I think we were really one of the first bands, with the help of our manager back then, Mike Whited, to bridge the gap between those three clubs, because the Decade was sort of an exclusive club to a certain set of bands. Graffiti, the owner over there, sort of didn't want bands playing other clubs, to sort of compromise the draw that would come to his club. And so he would say, well, no, you can't play this other club if you're playing my club within so many weeks. And we sort of, I'm not sure how we tackled that, but we were one of the only bands to be able to play all those clubs, within a few weeks of each other.
Did you ever play the Electric Banana?
Not as the Clarks. I played it once, way, way, way back.
Yeah. And it's a restaurant now, isn't it?
Yeah, and from what I understand, they do a really nice business, and the food's really good. It's the same two, the husband and wife still own it, and they run the business. I've heard nothing but good about it.
Huh. How about the first time you guys went out of state to play? What drew you out of state? What was it that made you think, okay, here's a place we need to go because it's a likely place for us to draw a crowd? How did that work out? How did that play out?
Well, what we realized is that we got a few things. We were getting the airplay on Double X and a couple of regional college radio stations, and we started to try to visit those markets, the Youngstown. Where else did we end up going? I guess down to Morgantown, where there were a lot of Pittsburgh people that had gone in those directions. So we instantly had at least a small fan base. But we realized that we couldn't just do it on our own, just putting up flyers or, the old-fashioned way without the Internet. You really had trouble marketing to get to those places. So we really developed the, as we called it, the foreign exchange program, that we would find similar bands as ours and, look in the local newspapers or, try and find venues and bands that were similar to ours, and would make calls and see if if people wanted to trade gigs. We met a bunch of bands. We met bands from Harrisburg, Erie, D.C., Philly, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Nashville, different places that we would say, okay, you guys come here, we'll give you gas money, we'll go there, and you give us gas money, and you'd play to their hometown base, which instead of having 10 people in the crowd, you'd have 100, 200 people right there. It really worked out well for us.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty smart innovation. Is that something that other people were doing, or is it just something that seemed like a good idea to you guys?
I'm sure people were doing it, and I don't know with what kind of success, but I think we really took it seriously and took that to the next level. As far as what bands were doing at the time, really starting to trade shows. And I tell that to bands now. How did you get out of state? Asking the same question you did, and that seems like a novel idea to them. It's like, well, that's I thought this was just sort of a standard thing that happened, but I guess not.
When did you first start noticing people show up and wearing their Steelers shirts and making it a Pittsburgh thing? Of course, away from Pittsburgh venues. Was that maybe mid-'90s that started happening?
Yeah, I would imagine. Because at first, I think we were getting intense Clark's fans coming out to the show, and they were interested in the music. And then you realize how many people have moved out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then it became a Pittsburgh thing to get together in Charlotte or Raleigh or D.C. or whatever, and Pittsburgh people knew other Pittsburgh people were going to be there, and so it turned into a Pittsburgh thing, and that's when the shirts and the Here We Go Steelers chants and the Let's Go Pens chant, there's always something going on sports-wise, so that was a natural next step.
Yeah, I remember Mike Sauter, the music director at YUP, was telling me he was in Jersey in the early 90s, and went to a gig when somebody said, there's a band from Pittsburgh playing, why don't you come check them out with me? And he went, and he was amazed at how many people were sitting there with Steelers shirts and Penguins shirts, and terrible towels were in the crowd, and he thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, at first we were a little reluctant to buy into that, because we were trying to sell our art and our craft and everything, and trying to look more national or international. But then after a while, you realize that those are the people that are coming out to the shows. They paid the money, and we really started to embrace it and have fun with it.
Where do you see the future? I guess we've been at this for a while. I want to go ahead and try to kind of wrap it up and come to some sort of a conclusion, but with some focus here. Where do you see the future for you guys? Because you've been doing it for more than 25 years now. Hundreds of thousands of CDs sold. You played all over the country. You played in Europe. Have any ideas, or are you just kind of sort of letting it happen as it happens?
The future is continuing to do shows. We have a full summer full of shows. The fall actually looks pretty full too. So the rest of the year is going to look really nice. And in the midst of that, we decided that the only way to stay current and relevant is to keep releasing projects. So I think over the next year you'll start seeing new songs come to life on stage, and when we get 11, 12 good songs, we'll put out a new project. We've already decided we'd like to put out a new project. So that's the short term, and then as the kids grow up, some of the guys have kids, young kids, and we're somewhat limited to our touring distance because of family and different situations that we all have. Dave owning a train shop up in Mercer, that keeps him pretty close to having to be near Mercer during the weekdays. But, there will be a time that hopefully we'll get back out to start doing some Chicago shows, maybe go to Charlotte. That may not be for another year or two, but that hopefully will come about again as well.
It's nice to have those options, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You can do it if you want to.
Well, we have a lot of side projects that keep us busy. Scott has his solo thing. Scott and Rob and I do, our acoustic shows that we've been doing regularly now up at the New Jurgles in Warrendale.
Did you release solo stuff yourself?
I have in the past. Scott has in the past. You know, I've been playing with a cover band as well, just to get out there and have some fun. I've been playing with Trace Lads. And Rob, he teaches guitar lessons, and he's real active with doing music at his church. And as I said, Dave, he has a train shop up in Mercer. So we have a lot of good side musical projects that we're involved with.
Well, as this is posted at the Central Public Radio website, we have a link there to mercerjunction.com.
There you go.
Sonic Dog, and so the people that are checking out the feature and listening to you guys in that interview session will also have access to, and the Clark's own website is there as well.
Oh, good. Okay.
Get an insight into the other things you're doing other than getting on stage and rocking the house.
And I'm going to go back right now and listen to the final edit.
Okay. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's always tough to get something down to, you know, with public radio, you get a lot more time than you do in some venues, but still, there's still always the tyranny of the clock in some way, shape, or form, and you know, taking all of that and culling it down to something that fits into the available time window is always difficult. So I'll say thank you very much for spending the time doing this, and I really appreciate you guys letting me do the interview with you. It's something that I had thought of for years and had just always put it on the back burner because it was always something else that needed immediate attention. And then even after I interviewed you guys, which was last fall, as I said in the email I sent to you guys, I'm embarrassed to say that it took me this long to get it done. But I did finally get it done. But I very much appreciate you giving me the chance to talk to you and put your story on a Central Public Radio like I did. And I just think, well, I've always really dug your music. Still have your original album with your, you guys autographed it for me.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's warped, too, because they sent them to us.
It's still in pretty good shape because my vinyl doesn't get taken out very often. My kid bought me a turntable a couple of Christmases ago, so I do have something I can play it on. I went for probably 15 years without even owning a turntable, so the vinyl just sat where it was. It's relatively safe.
It's on CD now.
Yeah, everything's on CD now.
You can revive it now.
Yeah, but it doesn't have your autographs on it. Scott even used his nickname, from way back when, I guess his college nickname, rather than just signing it as Scott. And there was something about that.
Say Fido on it.
Yeah. And geez, I guess it was Rob wrote "Keep Wearing," or no, somebody wrote "Keep Wearing" that T-shirt because I had one of the original Clark's T-shirts, which I wish I still had, although it probably wouldn't fit me anymore.
Yeah, likewise.
And I think Rob wrote something about keep playing that guitar because we used to talk. I dabble with guitar. I'm playing the same 4 chords I learned in 1966, but I still mess around with it. And Rob wrote it. Keep playing that guitar, man.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you thought to look us up and put this together. This is great.
Well, it's a great story. I mean, you guys are integral to the city. I mean, you have without any intent. It's not like you started out getting out of college saying we want to become woven into the fabric of the city. I mean, you can't. Nobody could try to do that, but you have done it just by the music you make and just being who you are. You really are integral to the fabric of the city, and you are the house band for a whole generation of Pittsburghers, and then some. The guys that came before you, like Donnie Iris and Norm Nardini, Joe Bruschecki. I mean, they all have a following and a reputation, but there's something inherently Pittsburgh about the Clarks that supersedes even what they do, and they are all very tied. In fact, I interviewed Norm Nardini probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and he talked about playing in other venues, playing in other cities, and people having expectations of what his music was because he came from Pittsburgh. Having a bit of a tough and a gritty feel to it.
Right.
And you guys have that, and you have there's a toughness to your music. It's a solidly rockin' style of rock and roll.
And we came into the industry when the public was endearing local artists, local radio, like YEP and some of the other stations in town were playing a lot of, and YEP certainly still does. But there was a focus on local music and making local music turn into national music. Whether it was in Cleveland, whether it was in Cincinnati, Nashville, clubs and towns were embracing local to try and get it to be national. And we were in a fortunate moment in rock and roll history that helped us, propel us and keep us going, because I don't see that happening as much today.
Yeah, I guess. Well, everything changes, and yeah, I guess it was fortuitous to be at that right moment, but like a lot of people with success, you made your own luck too by being able to do what the moment called for. The moment is there, but if you don't have what it takes to seize the moment, then it doesn't happen.
That's right.
So I appreciate you letting me interview you and spending the time doing this Google Plus thing, and look forward to catching you guys live, blowing a roof off a place sometime.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Thanks a lot, Greg.
All right.
And now somebody who knows what they're doing is going to turn this off for me because I want to.
Likewise.
All right.